Welcome to chapter 8 of First Corinthians. It's hard to believe we're halfway through the book already. Just a reminder that there will be a test at the end of this week. It's open book, open notes, open Bible, open whatever. You do have a time limit. It's an essay test. So it's not going to be true or false or multiple choice. A few questions and spend as much time as is available to you to answer those. The more you tell me, the better your grade. We're looking at chapter 8 this week. Chapter 8 begins with the danger of knowledge. Now, understand, we all enjoy knowledge. It's important for us to learn. We're a seminary. We want you to learn a whole lot, so we give you a bunch of knowledge. But Paul indicates that knowledge has the danger of puffing up. Today, we might say people get a fat head when they have too much education. And so Paul's emphasis here is that knowledge is good, knowledge is important, but knowledge has to be framed, buffered, and counterbalanced by love and by concern for others. And so he goes into a discussion of the weaker brother. Now, he deals with this more in Romans chapter 14. So you may want to go there and refresh that if you haven't read it recently. It's more thorough in Romans, but he does deal with this issue of the weaker brother here in First Corinthians chapter 8. We have to understand the weaker brother is not someone with lower standards, and we have to be careful of declaring someone's standards are lower than ours. They might be different than ours, but the implication of lower or higher implies better and not so good. So be careful of our terminology here. The weaker brother is not the one with the higher standards. Some will argue that those with the higher standards are the weaker brother because they expect everybody to live up to, and we get into this upper and lower, higher and not so good. We get into that discussion, but the idea is if you don't do what I say, then you're not a real Christian, or you're not a good Christian, or you're not a spiritual Christian. So Paul here, I think, argues, and in Romans 14, that the weaker brother is the immature believer. It's the believer who doesn't understand the ramifications of his salvation. Now, it's not that he doesn't fully understand. We don't fully understand. I've been studying the Bible for over half a century, and I still don't fully understand the ramifications of our salvation. I don't think we ever actually will. Nevertheless, as we mature, and when Paul talks about the carnal Christian a few chapters ago, one of the things that he argued was that when I was with you, you were carnal. That's not a problem. You were new Christians then, but you're still carnal. And Paul only writes about 3 years after he was in Corinth, about a year and a half after he left, about 3 years after he first arrived. And so what he's arguing is that within about 3 years, we should be mature believers. Now, I don't know about you, but 3 years into my Christianity, I don't think anybody around me would consider me a mature believer. I was still a teenager, got saved when I was 13. So, 3 years into my salvation, I'm a 16-year-old kid. But the implication is it doesn't take a lifetime to grow up. That spiritual maturity comes, frankly, relatively quickly if we're doing what we ought to be doing. Now, understand, Paul is not talking to preachers. He's not talking to seminary students, Bible college students. He's talking to people who held down full-time jobs. He's talking to people who had to earn their living. He may have been talking to slaves who were at the beck and call of their owners. So he's talking to normal people like you and me. And so his argument then in here in First Corinthians 8 is that the weaker brother is the immature believer, doesn't fully understand the ramifications of his salvation, hasn't yet arrived at the point where he realizes that his old life is gone and done. Those of us who are more mature need to be careful of our conduct around new believers. There are things that Satan just cannot tempt us with. I mean, he doesn't even bother because he knows it's a waste of time. We should not, however, when we are around new believers who are tempted by all kinds of things, especially stuff in their old life, we should be careful not to help Satan tempt them, to lead them into some kind of mistaken direction. So Paul emphasizes here our concern for others. It's going to carry that into chapters 9 and 10 a week from now. But for now, read through chapter 8, take your first test, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks. Bye.